So something that I've been doing pretty consistently multiple times every single day for the past, I'd say, year and a bit is asking myself, moment to moment, how would the most pro, upgraded, and ideal version of me act right now? Whether I'm creating something, I'm working, maybe I'm making a podcast recording like this, or I'm making a short form video content, whether I'm talking to someone, I'm in conversation with someone, whether it's a loved one, a friend, a stranger, or if I'm just naturally like going through the course of my day. I take a second and pause and imagine that version of myself, the most pro upgraded version of me, how they speak, how they would move, how they would navigate whatever situation I'm currently in. Now, of course, this takes presence, right? You have to be in the moment in order to remember to ask yourself this question. And yes, this also takes intention. You do need at least some sense of who it is you want to be, the kind of person you would like to become. But the clearer the vision, the more natural it becomes. And over time, you notice subtle shifts. Your posture might straighten, your mind starts to calm, your actions become more intentional, and you start showing up as your highest self instead of reacting to things happening impulsively. By taking a second to consciously pause, and before you do anything, you ask yourself, how would the most pro or upgraded or ideal version of me act here or speak here? You will notice in real time, like I said, maybe you just start to stand up a little bit more straight. You start to automatically think a little bit clearer. Your mind starts to calm down. Maybe you take an extra second and actually think about what you're about to say before you respond. One of the biggest reasons this habit is so powerful is that it removes a lot of regret. I feel like we spend so much time, so much of our lives looking back, wishing we had acted differently or wishing we said things a little bit differently. Maybe we look back and we say to ourselves, that's not how I want to be. You think of something that happened and you said something you shouldn't have said, or you did something you shouldn't have done, and you're like, I don't want to be that way anymore. And by asking yourself this question in the moment, like, what would the pro, most upgraded version of me do here or say here? You're practicing alignment rather than reaction. And you have to realize that mistakes, of course, still happen and they're valuable for learning, of course. But once you start incorporating this question into your life, you start asking yourself this question, consistently, you're acting from clarity, from purpose, from intention, instead of just reacting, like I said, to whatever's going on around you. Small acts like holding a door for a stranger, let's say, or responding calmly in a tough conversation, or taking decisive action on a project adds up over time. These actions don't just change your behavior, they reshape your beliefs, your confidence, and even your perception of the world, because identity follows action. The more you act like the most pro or upgraded or ideal version of you, your best self, the more you start believing it. And then the more natural it becomes to continue showing up in that way. If the best or most pro ideal version of you is a more kinder version of yourself, you're going to notice, again, in small ways, you just start opening up the door for strangers. If somebody drops something on the street, maybe normally you wouldn't pick it up and let them know. Well, you start doing that now. If you were having a tough conversation with someone, instead of lashing out and acting angry and frustrated, maybe you take a second to calm, pause, get present. You ask yourself that question, how would the most pro version of me act here? And then you take a second to respond calmly instead. What this practice or this habit has done for me personally is it completely transformed the way that I live my life. Life is built moment to moment, right? The present moment is the only thing that we have. And the way that you choose to show up in each moment determines your growth, your confidence, your alignment with who it is you truly want to be. And by consistently asking what would the best version of me do right now, you stop reacting out of habit. You reduce regret and you begin to live in harmony with your values, with your ideals. Over time, Your upgraded self stops being a concept and becomes your natural state. Your actions, your mindset, and identity all moving together in alignment, creating a life that reflects your highest potential and who it is you've gotten clear on, the kind of person you've gotten clear on, the kind of person you think is so far off into the distance and you feel like you need to learn all these things in order to become that person. You just start embodying them and their character traits and their values now by taking a second to pause, and before doing anything, before saying anything, you remind yourself of that question: what would the best version of me do now? And I know I gave some like real world examples a minute ago, but I can talk about this a little bit more in depth because I think it's so important. Let's say you're stuck, you're doubting yourself, maybe you're procrastinating. You take a second to pause and you ask yourself, what would the confident, disciplined version of me do right now? What would the best version of me do right now? Suddenly, you take the first step. You start outlining a plan, or you start creating rather than overthinking. Instead of skipping a workout, let's say, or reaching for junk food, you take a second to pause and ask yourself, what would the version of me who values health and living a healthy lifestyle choose right now? And then you make that choice, that aligned choice that ultimately supports your long-term goals and visions. Let's take another example in terms of like your productivity. When you feel distracted or tempted to pick up your phone and start scrolling social media, which I feel like we all fall victim to, your upgraded self probably stays intentional about how they're choosing to spend their time. They're probably very focused. So you ask yourself, how would I use this hour if I were my best self? And then suddenly you're getting meaningful work done instead of picking up your phone and scrolling. Or you're doing something that you know is going to help you in the long run. Like maybe instead of picking up your phone and scrolling, you spend 5 minutes in meditation, or you pick up a book and you start reading a chapter of a book. Ultimately, what you're doing is you're just reminding yourself of who it is you want to be and how you want to act. And because you've already gotten clear on those things and you become emotionally involved with that image, with that version of you, that image of who it is you want to be, you're just going to start acting like them now because you know that's what you want. You're just reminding yourself of it day to day, moment to moment, before acting, before speaking. We have to realize that our beliefs, our level of confidence internally, and the perception that we hold of the world aren't just abstract things that appear out of nowhere. They're shaped by what we do consistently. Think about it. Like if you consistently act like a confident, kind, solution-oriented individual, over time you start believing that you are that person. Like it's just who you are. It's normal, it's natural for you to be that person. Your mind is going to begin to interpret the world through that lens. Your confidence grows because you have evidence. You're taking the actions of the person you want to be. Your perception shifts because you start noticing solutions, opportunities, and, just like positive interactions that align with that identity. This is why so many people struggle, because they act one way, but they want to feel another way. There's a disconnect there. By stepping into the most pro or upgraded version of yourself in the moment, you remove that gap completely, because your actions, your beliefs, your confidence, they all start moving in the same direction. They're all aligned with one another. Acting from your upgraded self gives you control over how you show up, which ultimately shapes your life, your reality. And it's also deeply empowering when you think about it, because this practice, incorporating this question into your life regularly, it reminds you that your identity isn't fixed. You can choose who you are in each moment. And the more you practice, the more it becomes natural. Your pro or upgraded self stops being a concept. Like I said, it stops being this far off distant goal, and it starts being your baseline, your confidence, the clarity that you want. Even your relationships improve because of this, because you're showing up fully aligned with who you truly want to be. And at the end of the day, once you start doing what that person would do, you become that person. And who's to say you aren't that person when you act like that person. You will start to see yourself as the person you want to be. And naturally, you'll just carry yourself as that person, and the results will follow from there. And I know I mentioned this before, but if you are someone who tends to live a lot in the past, obviously I talk a lot about the present moment, being present. A lot of people focus on their future and they get anxiety around what's to come. But for a lot of people, they're stuck living in the past. They regret certain things that they did, regret certain things that they said. And just for the purpose of actually fully understanding the point I'm making here, think about your own life. How many times have you said something in a conversation, or you did something, or you acted out in some way? Maybe you made a mistake at work. You reacted in a way that you didn't like. And then hours later, days later, however long later, you thought to yourself, that's not who I am. That's not who I want to be. That's not how I want to be. When you practice acting like your pro self in the moment, a lot of that regret disappears. You start showing up in ways that are already aligned with your values. Again, mistakes will happen. That's natural. Of course they're going to happen. But when they do happen, they're easier to learn from because you're acting from clarity. You're acting from purpose rather than acting out of frustration or stress or impulse. That's the biggest point that I want to take home in this recording. Taking a second to pause and asking yourself this important question gives you space to respond intentionally. You start acting in alignment with the person that you want to be. And when your actions consistently reflect that ideal self, there's less looking back and regretting. You're then creating moments and experiences that you can be proud of in the way that you handled it, instead of wishing you'd done something differently. How would the calm, the grounded, peaceful, professional version of me respond in this instance? What would the most healthiest, fit, in shape version of me buy in this grocery store? How would the most present, empathetic, kind, attentive version of me say in this conversation? You think about it for half a second and then you respond accordingly. Moment to moment, you just take a second to pause, ask yourself that quick question, and then you respond accordingly. And you just do that multiple times throughout the course of your day. You just remember to ask yourself that question. So I do like to end these recordings with some sort of actionable advice. So here's what I want you to do today. Start asking yourself this question in the moment. What would the best version of me do right now? Start small. Maybe it's how you speak to someone, how you handle a challenge or an issue that comes up, or even just how you move through your day. Remember that mistakes are still part of the process. They're valuable. They're very valuable. But the difference is you're showing up intentionally instead of reacting automatically. And over time, your actions, your beliefs, your confidence, your perception of the world will align with the upgraded version of yourself. That's how your identity transforms. So this is something that I've been doing for a while. It's completely changed the way that I live my life. I no longer see the version of me that I want to be as some distant, far off goal. I'm him. I see myself as him. I act that way. I try my best moment to moment to act like him. Again, mistakes will happen. Nobody's perfect. But it's just about being present, being intentional. Chances are you've probably already gotten clear about who it is you want to be, and you're just bringing that into the moment, bringing that into the now, and fusing it with who it is you are. So I hope you got some value from listening to this. Thank you for being a part of Presence of Being and everything that we're building here at Presence of Being, promoting a more present way of life. If you enjoyed listening to this recording, let me know. My DMs are always open. I'm always happy to have a conversation. Leaving a like, commenting, subscribing would help a lot. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, leaving a positive review on the podcast definitely helps a lot as well. And if you want to support what we're building here, going to presenceofbeing.co and grabbing a hat would also mean a lot. So thank you very much for listening. I hope you're having an incredible day wherever you're listening to this, and I will see you in the next recording very soon.